The first time I saw Ethan Caldwell, he was leaning against the faded picket fence of our new neighbor's house. Arms crossed, eyes narrowed like I was a trespasser in his kingdom. I was 22, hauling boxes into the tiny rental on Maple Street, sweat dripping down my neck under the Georgia sun. When his voice cut through the humid air, "You don't belong here." Those words, sharp as a blade, stopped me cold, my heart pounding with the weight of being unwelcome before I'd even unpacked. I'd moved to Willow Creek, a sleepy southern town where everyone knew everyone, to escape the noise of Atlanta and the ghosts of a childhood that never felt like mine. Growing up as Jamie Torres, the kid who didn't fit too quiet, too artistic, too different, I'd learned to keep my head down. But here, in a place where pickup trucks and church bells ruled, I was determined to start fresh. The house was a fixer-upper, cheap enough for a barista's savings, with peeling paint and a porch that creaked like it was whispering secrets. I thought it was perfect. Ethan, apparently, disagreed. He lived next door, in a neat brick house with a lawn so pristine it looked like it had been mowed with a ruler. He was 24, all broad shoulders and stormy blue eyes. The kind of guy who could have been a high school quarterback but carried a chip on his shoulder instead of a trophy. That first day, he watched me struggle with a box of sketchbooks, his jaw tight, like my existence was a personal offense. "This is a family neighborhood," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Not a place for people like you." I froze, the word faggot hanging unspoken between us, a word I'd heard too many times before. I wanted to snap back, to tell him he didn't know me, but my throat tightened, and I just turned away, dragging my boxes inside. The next few weeks were a silent war. Ethan's glares followed me every time I stepped outside, whether I was watering my half-dead garden or sketching on the porch. He'd mow his lawn at dawn, the roar of the machine waking me up, or blast country music late at night, as if daring me to complain. I didn't. I'd learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse. Instead, I painted my house a soft lavender, partly because I loved it, partly because I knew it'd drive him crazy. Sure enough, the next day, I caught him staring at it, his face a mix of disgust and something else I couldn't place. Curiosity, maybe, or doubt. Willow Creek wasn't exactly welcoming either. At the diner where I worked, locals whispered about the new guy with the earrings and the paint-splattered jeans. The town wasn't cruel, just small. And small towns have a way of making you feel like an outsider forever. But there were glimmers of Kinessa free coffee from Mrs. Harper, the diner's owner, or a nod from the mailman who didn't care who I was as long as I tipped. Still, Ethan's hostility stung the most. He was my neighbor, the one person I saw every day, and his rejection felt personal, like a wound that wouldn't heal. One night, a storm rolled in, the kind that shakes windows and makes the world feel like it's ending. I was on my porch, trying to save my easel from the wind, when I saw Ethan's truck pull into his driveway. He stumbled out, soaked to the bone, his usual swagger gone. Something was wrong. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the way his shoulders slumped, or the way he stood there, staring at his house like it was a stranger, but I called out, "You okay?" He didn't answer, just looked at me, his eyes raw with something I couldn't name. Then he turned and went inside, leaving me standing in the rain, my heart racing for reasons I didn't understand. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. In messy handwriting, it read, "Sorry for being a jerk. Can we talk?" Ethan. I stared at it for a good 10 minutes. My coffee going cold. Part of me wanted to crumple it up, to keep hating him for making my first weeks here hell. But another part, the part that remembered the look in his eyes last night, wanted to know why. So I knocked on his door. He opened it, looking like he hadn't slept. "I didn't mean to scare you off," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "It's just, this town. It's all I've ever known. And you're different." It threw me. I didn't know what to say. Different. That word again. But his eyes weren't cold anymore. They were searching, like he was trying to figure me out. "I'm not good with change," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I don't want to be that guy. Can we start over?" I should have said no. I should have told him to shove his apology. But something in his voice, in the way he stood there, vulnerable for the first time, made me nod. "Okay," I said. "But you owe me a coffee." He laughed, a sound that felt like the first crack in the wall between us. Over the next few weeks, Ethan surprised me. He'd show up with a thermos of coffee, claiming he made too much, or offer to help fix my leaky porch roof. We'd talk small things at first, like the best diner pie or the worst storms we'd seen. He told me about growing up in Willow Creek, about his dad who left when he was 10, about the pressure to be the perfect son in a town that worshipped tradition. I told him about Atlanta, about the art school I couldn't afford, about the family who loved me but never really understood me. Slowly, the glares turned to glances, the silences to conversations. I started to notice the way his eyes lingered on me when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his hand brushed mine when he passed me a hammer. It was subtle, but it was their ass spark, dangerous and undeniable. One evening, we were sitting on my porch, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and summer heat. He was telling me about the time he tried to leave Willow Creek but came back because it was home, for better or worse. I laughed, teasing him about being a small-town boy at heart. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You know, I was wrong about you. You do belong here." His voice was quiet, but his eyes were loud, full of something that made my chest tighten. I wanted to lean closer, to see if he felt it too, but fear stopped me. I'd been hurt before by words, by fists, by people who saw me as less. Could I trust him? Could I trust this? That night, I lay awake, replaying his words, his look, the way my heart had tripped over itself. I didn't know what was happening between us, but I knew one thing. Ethan Caldwell wasn't just my neighbor anymore. He was something more. Something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but something I couldn't walk away from. The summer stretched on, and Ethan became a constant in my life, like the cicadas that hummed through Willow Creek's nights. We'd sit on my porch or his, sharing beers and stories, our conversations weaving a fragile bridge between us. But there was a tension, to a pull we both felt but didn't name. Every time his hand grazed mine or his laugh softened into something private, I wondered if he was as scared as I was. Scared of what it meant. Scared of what Willow Creek would think. Scared of the parts of ourselves we'd both buried deep. One afternoon, I was painting in my backyard, a canvas of bold blues and greens, when Ethan wandered over. He'd started doing that, just showing up, like he couldn't stay away. "What's this one about?" he asked, nodding at the half-finished piece. I shrugged, wiping paint off my hands. "It's about freedom. About being who you are. even when the world tells you not to. He went quiet, his eyes tracing the streaks of color. "Sounds like you," he said finally, and the weight of those words hung between us, heavy with meaning. That night, the town held its annual fair, a chaotic mix of fried food, carnival games, and country music blaring from speakers. Ethan insisted I go with him, claiming I needed to experience Willow Creek at its finest. I laughed but agreed, nervous about being seen together in a place where gossip spread faster than wildfire. At the fair, under strings of fairy lights, we wandered through the crowd, sharing cotton candy and dodging kids with sticky fingers. For a moment, it felt like we were just two guys, not a newcomer in the town's golden boy, not the labels that kept us apart. Then it happened. We were at the ring toss booth, laughing over my terrible aim, when Ethan's hand brushed mine and lingered, his fingers curling around my wrist. My breath caught, and I looked up to find him staring at me, his face open, unguarded, like he'd made a decision he couldn't take back. "Jamie," he said, so soft I barely heard him over the music. "I don't care what they think." Before I could respond, he leaned in, his lips brushing me a kiss so quick it was over before I could process it, but so electric it lit up every nerve in my body. He pulled back, eyes wide, like he'd surprised himself as much as me. The crowd didn't notice, but I felt the world shift. We didn't talk about it on the walk home, but the silence was different now, charged with possibility. At my door, he hesitated, then said, "I meant it. I don't care what they think. But I need time." I nodded, my heart a mess of hope and fear. "Take all the time you need," I said, though every part of me wanted to pull him close and never let go. The next day, reality crashed in. I was at the diner, pouring coffee for a regular, when I overheard two guys at the counter. "Saw Caldwell with that new kid last night," one said, his voice dripping with disdain. "What's he doing hanging around someone like that?" The other laughed, a cruel sound that made my stomach twist. I kept my head down, but the words burned. By evening, the whispers had spread, and Ethan's truck stayed parked in his driveway, his lights off. I knocked, but he didn't answer. For 3 days, he avoided me, and the ache in my chest grew sharper with every passing hour. On the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I marched to his house, banging on the door until he opened it, his face pale, eyes tired. "What the hell, Ethan?" I demanded. "You kiss me, then ghost me. What's going on?" He pulled me inside, shutting the door like he was afraid the town was listening. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. I freaked out. This place, it's all I've got. My mom, my friends, they're here. If they knew. He trailed off, but I saw it in his eyes, fear, the kind that had kept me quiet for years. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was pain for him, for me, for the world that made us hide. "You don't have to do this alone," I said, stepping closer. "But you have to choose. Are you in, or are you out?" He looked at me, his breath shaky, and for a moment, I thought he'd walk away. Then he grabbed my hand, pulling me into a kiss that was nothing like the first, fierce, desperate, like he was pouring everything he'd held back into it. When we broke apart, he whispered, "I'm in." From then on, we were careful but not invisible. We'd steal moments a touch in the shadow of his garage. A smile across the diner counter. Willow Creek wasn't ready for us. But we were building something stronger than its judgment. Still, the whispers grew louder. Notes appeared in my mailbox and signed. Ugly words that made my hands shake. Ethan's mom, a kind woman with tired eyes, started asking why he was acting different. The pressure was building, and I could feel Ethan slipping, torn between the life he'd always known and the one we were creating. One night, after a long shift, I came home to find my lavender house vandalized. The word freak scrawled across the door in red paint. I stood there, frozen, until Ethan's truck pulled up. He got out, saw the door, and his face crumpled. "This is my fault," he said, his voice thick with guilt. "I brought this on you." I shook my head, grabbing his arm. "No. This is their fault. Not yours. Not mine." He looked at me, his eyes searching, and I knew we were at a crossroads. We could run, or we could fight for us, for the right to exist as we were. That night, we cleaned the paint off together, scrubbing until our hands were raw. As the last streaks faded, Ethan took my hand, his grip steady. "I'm not running," he said. "Not anymore." I believed him, but I also knew the hardest part was coming. Willow Creek wasn't just a tone, it was a battleground, and we were about to step into the fight of our lives. The vandalism was a spark, and Willow Creek caught fire. The whispers turned to shouts, people stared openly now, their judgment a weight I felt every time I left the house. Ethan's mom confronted him, her voice sharp with worry, asking if he was getting mixed up with that boy. He didn't deny it, and that small act of courage felt like a victory, even if it cost him her trust. At the diner, Mrs. Harper pulled me aside, her eyes kind but firm. "You're a good kid, Jamie, but you're stirring things up. Be careful." I nodded, but careful wasn't an option anymore. Ethan and I were in too deep, our hearts tangled in a love that was as beautiful as it was dangerous. We started planning to leave. Not because we wanted to run, but because we wanted a place where we could breathe. Seattle, maybe, or San Francisco, somewhere the air didn't feel like it was pressing down on us. But leaving meant uprooting Ethan's entire life, and I could see the conflict in his eyes every time we talked about it. "I love you," he told me one night, his voice raw, the first time he'd said it out loud. "But this town, it's in my blood." I held him, my heart breaking for the choice he had to make, for the choice we both had to make. The breaking point came at the town's 4th of July barbecue. The whole neighborhood gathered in the park, kids running with sparklers, the air thick with the smell of grilled burgers and freedom. Ethan and I went together, not hiding but not flaunting either, just two guys sharing a blanket under the stars. Then someone later, we learned it was a guy from Ethan's old football team, shouted, "Hey, Caldwell, didn't know you were into that kind of thing." Laughter followed, cruel and sharp, and I felt Ethan tense beside me. I grabbed his hand, ready to pull him away, but he stood up, his voice steady. "Yeah, I am," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And if you've got a problem with it, that's on you." The park went silent, every eye on us. My heart pounded, pride and fear crashing together. Ethan's mom was there, her face pale, and for a moment, I thought she'd walk away. But she didn't. She stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "He's my son," she said. "And I love him." It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was a start. The crowd dispersed. Some muttering. Others silent. And I knew we'd just changed something in Willow Creek. Even if it was small. But the victory was short-lived. That night, someone threw a brick through my window. Glass shattering across my living room. The note tied to it read, "Leave. Or it gets worse." Ethan was at my side in minutes. His face a storm of anger and guilt. "We're done here," he said, his voice breaking. "We're leaving." I wanted to argue, to say we could fight. But the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. We weren't giving up, we were choosing to live. We packed in a frenzy, selling what we could, leaving the rest behind. Ethan's mom came to my house the next day, her eyes red from crying. "I don't understand," she said, "but I don't want to lose him." She hugged me, awkward but genuine, and it felt like a piece of the wall between us crumbled. The town didn't change overnight, but a few people misses. Harper, the mailman, a kid from the diner, stopped by to wish us luck. Their quiet support a reminder that not everyone hated us. We drove west. My old car stuffed with sketchbooks and Ethan's toolbox. The lavender house fading in the rearview mirror. In a small coastal town in Oregon, we found a new homey, a tiny apartment with a view of the ocean, where no one cared who we were. Ethan got a job fixing boats, and I started selling my paintings at a local gallery. We were free, but freedom came with scars. We'd fought for every moment of this happiness, and it made it all the sweeter. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan took me to the beach. The waves crashed softly, and the air smelled of salt and possibility. He was nervous, fidgeting with something in his pocket, and I teased him about it until he laughed. That warm sound I'd fallen in love with. Then he dropped to one knee, pulling out a simple silver ring. "Jamie Torres," he said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "You made me brave. You made me whole. Will you marry me?" I couldn't speak, my throat tight with every moment that had let us hear the glares. The kisses. The fights. The love that refused to break. I nodded, pulling him up into a kiss that tasted like salt and forever. As we stood there, wrapped in each other, I thought of Willow Creek, of the boy who said I didn't belong, and the man who'd chosen me over everything he'd ever known. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living loudly, proudly, together.